Good morning, fabulous first graders. Today I'm going to read to you our 4 oral vocabulary cards. This week the text is nonfiction and it's called What Scientists Do. But before we read that, I want to introduce the vocabulary that we are going to learn about and listen for during the reading. And families, these vocabulary words are not words where we're worried about spelling and honestly not even being able to read them necessarily. It really is words that we are learning to expand our vocabulary and to help us be able to deepen our comprehension as readers, so being able to understand more things as we're reading and listening. So this is a listening activity, but students might need your help to take a short quiz after this video to match vocabulary words and their definitions. I'd appreciate your support with helping them read the word and the definition, and maybe even thinking through whether or not something matches if it's a new word or an unfamiliar word. So the first word I want to define for you is the word curious. Will you say that word out loud for me, please? Curious. To be curious is to ask questions and to want to know things. So an example might be Jane is curious about what causes lightning. She's wondering why something is happening. Okay, the next word is investigate. Will you say that word with me? Investigate. To investigate means to look closely for new information. So, for instance, you might say the students wanted to investigate why their plants were not growing. They wanted to look into something. All right, next word is improve. Oops, let's see. Will you please say that word? Improve. Okay. If you improve something, you make it better. So for instance, I think Gaius is a swimmer, right? Gaius improved his swimming by practicing every day. All right, next word, just 2 more. This word is fascinating. Will you echo that, please? Fascinating. If something is fascinating, it is very interesting. So we could say Danica thought the book was fascinating and could not put it down. She thought it was very interesting. Okay, and last word, career. Your turn. Career. A career is the kind of work or job that a person does. So, for instance, I think teaching is an interesting career. That's my job. So, as you listen for these words, like we normally do with our oral vocabulary cards when we use them, if you hear it in the story, you put your hand up to your ear. And I can't see you doing it, but I know you're going to listen for those words. We'll do them one more time. You ready? So, career, fascinating, improve, investigate, and curious. So before I begin reading, let's take a look at this first card. And again, the title of this text is called What Scientists Do. Okay, I'm going to read about a few different scientists. And I'm wondering, as you're looking at this picture, what do you think these people are doing? Where do you think they are? Ready? Science helps us understand our world. Without science, we wouldn't know that Earth is a planet that spins around the sun. We also wouldn't have telephones, electric lights, computers, or medicines. Because there's so much to discover about our world, there are many different kinds of scientists. But all of them share something. They are very curious and ask lots of questions. If you put your hand up to your ear, you heard that word curious. What are some different kinds of scientists? Biologists investigate the human body. Astronomers observe the stars and planets. And paleontologists study dinosaur bones and other things from the past. These are just a few examples of the work scientists do. Now, let's find out about 3 scientists who've helped us learn about our world in different ways. Ooh, we heard those words, curious and investigate. Next card. This gentleman on the front is George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver was a botanist or a scientist who studies plants. George was born a slave in Missouri. Growing up, he liked plants and was curious about them. Oh, there it is again. Later on, George went to college and studied science. George used his knowledge of plants to improve the lives of poor Southern farmers. Planting cotton each year ruined the soil, so he set out to find other crops to grow. George found that peanuts, soybeans, and sweet potatoes improved the soil. He also discovered many new ways to use these crops. George is best known for his work with peanuts. He created more than 300 products from the peanut plant, including ink, milk, shampoo, flour, cheese, and of course, Miss Archer's favorite, peanut butter. George became famous for his work, and he received many awards. But he did not care about being famous. He cared most about helping others. All right. Next person, next scientist, one of my personal heroes. Her name is Jane Goodall. As a young girl, Jane Goodall found animals fascinating. When Jane was 5, she hid in a hen house for hours because she wanted to find out how chickens laid eggs. When Jane grew up, she traveled to Africa. She set up a tent in a national park where many chimpanzees lived. For almost a year, she observed the behavior of chimps. No one had ever done that before. During that time, Jane learned many interesting things about chimps. For example, she learned that chimps like to imitate each other. This is something that other animals cannot do. She also observed that chimps use twigs to dig up bugs to eat. This was an important discovery because everyone thought only people were able to make tools. As the chimps got used to Jane, they became her friends. Later on, Jane set up parks where chimps could live safely. Today, Jane Goodall travels all over the world, asking people to help save the environment for all living things. All right, and last scientists. This gentleman's name is Leroy Chiao. In 1969, when Leroy Chiao was 8 years old, he watched astronauts walk on the moon for the first time. Right then, he decided that being an astronaut was the career for him. Years later, Leroy made his dream come true. In 1983, he became a doctor in chemical engineering. He worked on developing instruments to use in space. Then, in 1990, he became an astronaut. Now, he could go into space himself. In 2004, Leroy lived in space for 6 months at the International Space Station. During this time, he helped lead many scientific tests or experiments. While he was aboard the space station, Leroy voted in an election for the President of the United States. He was the first American to vote for a president from outer space. Today, Leroy is a college professor. You can be sure that his students have a lot to learn from him. Awesome. So those were our vocabulary cards for this week, what scientists do. I'd love if you would practice retelling some of the things that we just read about to your families. And if you would like to do that, you might talk about what are some of the different kinds of scientists that we learned about, or what did they study, what was their career. You might ask or answer, what was it that George Washington Carver studied? How did he help people? You might ask or answer, what did Jane Goodall study? How did she, or what's her mission now to help people? What did she discover about chimpanzees, maybe? And then finally, Leroy Chow. What was his dream? And what did he do as an astronaut? Okay. And last thing, if you have someone next to you who listened to this with you, you might try to make some connections about what did these three scientists have in common? What was the same about them? They did very different things, but there's some stuff that they have in common. Awesome. So if you are ready, you can now go over to the quiz that's in this assignment, one of the attachments. I don't think you need to write your name. It'll show me who you are when you take it, and just match up the vocabulary word with the definition. So there will be a definition for a word and then a little drop-down menu that you click, and then you pick which word goes with that definition. Awesome. All right. Hope you have a great day.